Welcome back to our next Fabric at Scale Together session. This session builds off our intro and data warehouse modules. Understanding how to effectively build scalable reports requires a solid foundation of semantic models. Here, Cameron Kahrs introduces data modeling and getting the most out of your semantic models for performance and scale. We hope you enjoyed today's session, and I'll turn it over to Cameron.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brian. Let me pull up the slides here just so that I have the control here. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, so like Brian said, today we're going to be talking about kind of semantic modeling inside Fabric. And so if you're familiar with Power BI, you might say, well, I'm familiar with Power BI. I don't need to, I know all about semantic modeling. And, we're going to go over some of the basics here for sure today, for folks that are maybe not as familiar. But at the same time, I'm hoping to show you maybe some features that are exclusive to Fabric, stuff we can do, inside of Fabric with some different import modes and different things. So hopefully there's something here for everybody. So again, thinking about those kind of four main pillars that we have of Fabric, this kind of falls under that empowering every business user, right? This is the ability to, have those visualization reports, let people get their data, take actions on that data, and present it in a format that everybody can use, whether it's a Teams, SharePoint, emailed right to your inbox, whatever it is. So today we're going to have the kind of a semantic modeling overview. We're going to talk about some of the key features, and then I have a live demo as well. So let's jump into what the semantic modeling inside Fabric/Power BI is. So again, I think we've shown this slide every section here, but these are kind of the workloads inside Fabric. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about the Power BI workload. So what is a semantic model? For those of you that don't know, a semantic model is essentially the endpoint model for your business. It's a model of your business. So it has all the data connections from your various data sources. The transformations are done. Relationships are defined. There's metrics and calculations so that this can be the one source of truth for your business. So when you have the question of, hey, how many widgets did we sell last month, you can open up this semantic model or a report on top of the semantic model and get that exact information that's been built all the way through. So again, Power BI, kind of that bridge between data and decisions. Basically taking your data, it's great to have data, but if we can't visualize it in a way, if we can't use it in a way that's not helping us make decisions, not very useful to have all that data. So obviously Power BI is that tool that we have inside Fabric to allow us to do interactive reports, real-time dashboards, those sorts of things to get insights and actionable items on our data. So let's look at the key features here. So when it comes to semantic modeling, there's kind of four main steps that we've kind of broken it out here. So the first step is getting data. And in Power BI, there's a query editor M language that does that on the back end. There is a user interface to do it all, no code on the front end if you want. But what it's using behind the scenes is the M code language, and I'll show you that in the demo. That you can actually write the code if you want. You can use the UI interface as well. You have options. But the first step is getting data from all the different various sources that you might have. Then we have the data modeling. This is, whether or not we're compressing data, building out those relationships. So if you're familiar with traditional data warehousing, we might have a fact table, several dimensions off of it, those sorts of things. Then we have model enhancement, right? Might be business analysts who are saying, hey, I have all this business logic, calculations, measures, these sorts of things that I want to know off the data that isn't, in the source system. So that's where we'd add that stuff here in the model enhancement part. And then lastly, the report creation. We want to have a report that we can visualize the data, look at those measures, consume it. So for the first step, that get data step, Power BI, obviously we have 275 plus connectors, and there's more connectors getting added all the time through our Microsoft partners. There's a process you can go to make your own connector for whatever data source system that you have. So we have lots of different ways to connect to those things. So whether it's Azure resources, Amazon, Google, on-prem, ODBC, anything like that, we can access that data and bring it into Power BI. All right, the second part is that data transformation. And so this is the part where we've got that M code language on the back end. So in the UI, you can you can bring in data and you can say, oh, maybe I want this column, I don't want that column, I want to rename these columns, those sorts of things. And what you'll get on the right hand side is sort of a applied steps. And what it's doing is it's converting those steps that you've done in the UI into the actual M code on the back end. And you can pull that up and you can see here in that bottom little window, that's the actual code that's getting generated. So whether or not you're merging data sets, if you're saying, hey, I got these two things from different sources, I'm going to merge them up, do joins, whatever it is, we can do all that inside Power BI for our semantic models. Then model enhancement, we get more into the relationships between the tables and the different data inside of them. This is important because when we have a report and we're saying, hey, I'm looking at all the widgets we sold last year, but maybe I want to just look at them for the United States. That's where we would, have a relationship between like a geography table and the sales table. And we would make sure that that filter direction was, single direction only, so that when we change a filter for the geography, it updates the sales table to show us, what we're looking at here. This is where we'll also set the object storage mode, and we'll get more into that in a little bit here. I think actually this one. So there's 4 different modes essentially. Well, there's kind of 3 modes, and we kind of mix 2 of them. But there's a handful of different modes that we can bring data into our semantic model. So the first one is kind of the traditional one that we've had since the beginning. It's called import mode. So this is source agnostic. Basically, what you're doing is you're saying, we're going to load the data into the semantic model in memory. So if I'm going out to my, data warehouse, I might say, hey, every 24 hours, every 5 hours, whatever the schedule is, go back to my data, load all the new data into the semantic model so it's there in memory and it's very fast and performant. This does, however, obviously require copying the data, whether or not you're on a schedule, or you're doing really, really small batches, those types of things. There is obviously a copy mechanic happening. So you're not always going to have real-time data. There will be a lag between whenever you last refreshed it. Now with import mode 2, you can do an incremental refresh. So instead of saying, hey, go get all the data every time, if you have a fact table with, for instance, sales, that can grow out of control very fast. So you might say to import mode, when you load the data in these batch cycles, just go get the new data based on like a date time column and just append that too. So that's another option of import mode. But import mode is we're copying the data into the semantic model for really fast, efficient performance. The second option we have is direct query mode. So now this doesn't do any local copy of the data. Everything's interpreted. So you can see here, when you have a Power BI report that sends a DAX query back to that semantic model, what it then does is it generates the SQL query necessary, or whatever sort of query it needs to pull that data into the model as it needs it and then display it for the report. So the benefit of this is no matter what you're doing inside the report, your data is always going to be up to date because it's generating the queries as they're needed. The downside of this is that it's obviously sensitive to database performance. So if you have, for instance, a transactional database that's getting hit a lot, well, now you might have reports and semantic models that are now hitting it also with their own set of queries that it needs to pull data from. And because it's making up these queries as it goes, you can find that it'll be often a bit slower than import mode, where all the data is in the memory and it's very fast. But it gives you the ability to have your data as you need it. It's up to date always. So this is the kind of half mode I was talking about. This is the composite mode. So this is essentially saying like, well, maybe we want to do a little bit of direct query. Maybe we want to do a little bit of import too. So one of the reasons you might do this is you might say, hey, well, we have a fact table that's, our sales table, and that grows all the time. We're doing hundreds of sales, a day, whatever it is. But we have our dimension table. Maybe that's our customer, our geography table, those sorts of things. Those don't change hardly ever. So what we're going to do is we're going to import our dimension tables, and then for our fact tables, we're going to have those as direct query. That way we can be really fast on the filtering for the dimension tables, but then we have up-to-date information on the fact tables and sorts of things. So you kind of can pick and choose which tables in your model are going to have what. And so that's the composite mode. So this is a new feature to Fabric, specific to Fabric. It's the Fabric Direct Lake mode. And so what this actually does is it kind of combines the best of both worlds. So what we get here is that in Fabric, as we've talked about, everything under the covers is stored in, Delta Parquet format. So if you have a lake house that is on top of Delta Parquet files, and so they're formatted as, Delta tables, what's really interesting is the Vertipack engine that the Power BI semantic model has is really similar to the structure of those Delta Parquet files. So what we can do is we can actually do just a direct scan from the semantic model immediately over to what's inside our one lake. So this gives us the ability to not have to do refreshes, so we don't have to do batch loading, but then also we get the up-to-date timeliness of direct query at the same time. And this might be an old statistic, but when direct lake first came out, they were saying it's almost 10 times faster than direct query is at the processing and loading when they did a bunch of different metrics on it. And so the great thing is that obviously we don't have to set up refreshes and we get up-to-date data. So again, best of both worlds. And this is exclusive to Fabric too, because we need that one lake Delta Parquet format for our lake house to be able to read directly into the semantic model. And we'll do a demo of the direct lake modes here as well. So let me talk a little bit about Power BI. I think these next slides are Power BI related. Yes. So Power BI has its own calculation language. It's pretty similar to Excel's formula language. It's called DAX. And so when we're making measures, when we're making calculated columns, this is the language that we're going to be using. Now, what I think is really great is that we have obviously Copilot inside Power BI Desktop, inside your Fabric workspaces. If you have access to it, I don't write DAX myself anymore. I just ask Copilot to write the DAX for me. And sometimes I have to get in there and change a few things, but more often than not, it gets what I'm talking about too, which is really great. Let's see. Yeah, so the fully integrated Power BI semantic layer. So this is another feature that's specific to Fabric. So every time you make a lakehouse or a data warehouse, it will have by default a semantic model attached to it. So anytime there's changes immediately within the lakehouse, within your data warehouse, whatever it is, that default semantic model will automatically be updated as it needs, and it'll do import or direct query based on security or performance, whatever it needs to get the job done. And so the great thing is you can actually come in here into a lake house and say, hey, maybe this is our sales lake house, and we're going to have this semantic model that sits on top of it, and we're going to, pick and choose what tables are going to be in there. But then that one is always up to date for what's in the lake house. It's a direct reflection of what's inside your lake house there. So let me jump to the demo here, and we'll kind of go through a little bit of all that I just talked about here. So let me stop sharing. So yeah, let me open up Power BI Desktop here, and I'll show you what kind of importing data looks like here. So for this demo, I have a pretty simple, I just have the AdventureWorks 2022 data warehouse stored in an Azure SQL database. And that's kind of what we're going to use as our demo to pull data in and do different things here. So when I come into, Power BI Desktop, I can obviously click blank report, and this will get me going from the ground up. Move that. So you can see here, this is that get data piece that I was talking about earlier. And so if I click on this, you can see it'll give me some common data sources here. But if I click more, you can see this is the full list of everything that we can connect to. And then obviously you can filter it out through different things. And one of the things I think is really cool is that if I have a if I have Microsoft Fabric already running, I can connect directly to warehouses or lake houses and make semantic models off of them. I can also connect to semantic models that are already made. For this instance, I'm doing Azure, so I'm just doing an Azure SQL database. So I'd hit connect here. It's going to ask me for some information. Let me pull that up. And you can see that I have this data connectivity mode here where it's going to ask, well, do you want to do this in import? Do you want to do this in direct query? And so those are my options for doing it in here. I'll show you how to do the direct lake mode options inside the Fabric tenant. Let me pull up this server name. So I'm just going to do import for this. And I can give it a command timeout or SQL statement if I want to just do a specific statement. It's going to ask me to connect. I can choose which database I want to do. So I'm going to pick, obviously, the AdventureWorks one here. I don't have to bring in all these tables. I'm just going to bring in a couple. Maybe I decide dim customer, date, geography, products, and then I'll do fact, internet sales, right? Yeah. And so if I hit load, it'll load these tables into memory immediately, or I can hit transform data and I can start, editing them. Either way, you can see it gives me a little preview here, so I can make sure I'm pulling the right thing. I can actually select related tables. So I could say, hey, fact internet sales, pull in all the tables that it thinks are related to that table. So I could say, hey, it's going to bring in currency, customer, date, because these are all the things that inside my model are connected to that main fact table. So I don't want to bring in all that stuff for this demo. So I will uncheck a lot of these. Fact internet sales, product geography, date, customer. Yeah. So if I hit load, you can see it'll go off and actually load this into my memory here. So you can see it's going through all those tables that I selected, creating the connection, and then it'll start pulling in the rows of data. Normally, you'd have to give it your security credentials because I've already connected to this. It has my credentials cached. So, but you can see here, this is my data. I have those different tables that I was talking about. And so I can actually come in here in table view and I can view these just as actual tables, looking at everything that's in them. I can look at the model view. And so you can see here, actually what's happened here is that I have Power BI Desktop as one of its default features is it will automatically detect relationships between items as you bring them in. It's not always 100% right. Double check your work, obviously. But in this case, I think it's right. And so, I have a lot of on the fact internet sales table, I have order dates, I have ship dates. And so what it's done is it's made several relationships between that date key, some of which are inactive. You can see here these. So the ship date key versus the order date key and the due date. So it's saying due date is like the main date. I may want to change that. So I'm going to, I might come in here to these properties. I'm going to say, don't make that relationship active. The one I want to make active, the main one, is the one between order date. I want this to be the main relationship here. And so I can make those changes like that. So, 1 second here. Let me pull up. Oh. So yeah, there's also a little like DAX panel here, which I'll talk more about in a bit. Import mode. Yeah. So, and then once I brought those tables in, that's not the end of me being able to edit them in different things. I can always go to this transform data, which will pull up the Power Query editor. So back on that first tab, when I hit load instead of transform data would bring me to this value here, right? And so what I might say is that I might say, okay, well, maybe for this report or this semantic model specifically, I don't care about any internet sales that happened before 2012. So I might come here to my order date, and you can see here. Oh, that's due date. I can come here to my order date, and I can actually just put on, a filter or something. So I can actually just say, oh, so date time filters. I can say after, and then I'll give it a date here. So I can say, don't do anything unless it's after January 1st, 2012. And you can do more advanced filters that end up doing, is after, equals, is not, is in year, etc. I'm just going to keep it basic. I just don't want anything after 2012. And excuse me. And so what's kind of cool here is that you can see, like, that's a filter I did here. It added an applied step to my query here. And actually, if I look at this last step here, I can actually view the native query. I can see the query that's going to be sent back to that SQL database when I were to do a refresh of the data. And so you can see here what it's doing is just going, yep, I'm going to get all those column names. And it's actually smart enough to know that that filter that I put on order date is actually just a where clause. So there's some sort of, it's called query folding when it can do those kind of smart steps like that. If I was, for instance, connecting to, CSVs and blob storage, wouldn't necessarily do that. What would happen is I would bring in all the data and then delete the stuff I didn't need. Whereas here it's smart enough to know, oh, if you don't want anything past 2012, I'll throw in a where clause in the SQL query that I'm sending back to the source, which is really neat. And then if you click on the advanced editor here, this will show you, this is actually the M code on the back end that's getting made and triggered. So you can see my source is that demo data warehouse database. I'm specifically going to this AdventureWorks DW. I'm telling it the schema. I'm telling it this is the table name, and then I have my filtered rows. Then if I had other transformations, I would do them there too as well. So I can close and apply this, and since I'm applying changes, it's going to reevaluate that table, and now it's going to bring in only those dates that are after 2012. Like if I come here to fact internet sales, you can see if I go to order date, they're all going to be 2012 and beyond. But some of the other things I can do here is these calculations of different things. So maybe I want to say, okay, this is the data that we're pulling in from our source systems. This is great. Maybe the business analysts want something that's a little more a difference. So I might do like a calculated column here. And so I'm going to call this one margin. And this might just be sales amount minus total product cost, right? And it's going to run and it's going to calculate that for every single column here, which for a lot of these is same. But so if I come over here, I can say, all right, let's look at date. So let me pull the date hierarchy in here. Let's do like a bar chart, and then I will do that margin calculated column that I had here. So you can see here, this is my margin by year. You can see 2012, 2013, 2014, not a lot of records. And I can drill down and actually go into 2013. I can see, oh, maybe I want to look at Q3, specifically September, those sorts of things. And this is all based off of that margin calculation that I did. And so I drill back up. I could add in sales amount here as well. So this would be, let me change this to clustered. So you can see the actual difference between this is what I actually sold and this is my margin here, right? Anyways, there might be other things I want to do that are not at the column level. Maybe I want just a visual to show me just what was the total sales overall. And so in those cases, I would make a measure. Because the measure is going to be looking at the whole. So I'm going to call this one, actually, let me Let me use Copilot to do this here. So when I'm connected to Copilot, when I'm connected to my Fabric instance, it'll ask you to log in to my Fabric site. I have my Fabric capacity running. So I'm going to tell it here, create a, what did I say? Total sales? Yep, total sales measure. Interesting. For some reason, my Copilot is not working. Maybe I need to reconnect. Anyways, sorry that's not working at the moment. Anyways, well, I can write it by hand. So if I do a new measure here, I might call this measure, what do I have it in? I have it in the date table. I don't want to do that. I might come over here. I'm going to pull up the fact internet sales table. I'm going to do a new measure. This is total sales. It's just going to equal, pretty simple. I'm just doing sum of sales amount. But now that's the measure I have. And if I come back over here, I can pull this in as maybe a card, and it'll give me the total sales all up. And then obviously, if I filter these things, you can see, hey, 2012, this was the total sales. 2013, this was total sales. All years, this was the sales. So that's the interactivity piece there. But yeah, let me pull up because I had it done. This is a model I already loaded. Same data. Let me try the Copilot here. Nope. Okay. I don't know why that's not working. I'm sorry. Maybe I have to restart or refresh, but I don't know. Anyways, so that's kind of semantic modeling on the Power BI desktop. And so what I would do is once I'm like really happy with this report, this semantic model, what I can do is I can publish this from my Power BI desktop up to my Fabric workspace. And then once it's up there, I can, in the Fabric area, I can say, hey, every day, every 10 hours, here's how often I want you to refresh because it's doing an import mode, that sort of thing. It's like I might select here. So it's going to publish, there'll be a new semantic model in that area for me there. So yeah, so that's kind of all the different tools that we have for doing the semantic modeling inside of Power BI Desktop. Pretty similar tool set in the Fabric in the online space, but let me show you what this looks like inside Fabric, because we don't have to do it all inside Power BI Desktop. And if we want to do the direct lake mode models, excuse me, we need to do that inside of Fabric here because it's kind of a Fabric specific feature. So what I have here is this is my direct lake demo. So all I have is just a little data warehouse pipeline that's just doing a copy activity to bring that AdventureWorks data warehouse into my lakehouse here. And so you can see I haven't brought over all the tables, just customer, date, geography, product, internet sales, right? And you can see here that little triangle means that these are actually delta tables. So if I actually, if I can actually view the files, you can see these are all delta parquet files. I'm exposing them as a delta table, which is what's going to allow me to do the delta lake operations here. So if I switch over to the SQL endpoint, I can show you. And so every lakehouse gets a SQL endpoint like this. So you can see I have my tables, views, whatever, etc. And these are all formatted just as regular SQL tables. But the cool thing that I can do here is my model layouts. So I can actually have this is my model layout on the oops, sorry. Oh, I don't know how to move up. There you go. So you can see the relationships that I have here on the different things. As you can see, I have other tables here. These are actually system views that are part of this model. So I might say, actually, I want to um, manage the default semantic model. So that's the piece I was telling you about. So I might say, this is where I have those views for those different executive queries and things. I might say, I don't want those. Just give me the tables, right? And then it should. I refresh, should update that model there to only show me those four tables that I have selected. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, you can see here it even tells me like so it gives me the name. I have the storage mode, Direct Lake. It gives me the data source type, SQL Server database, those sorts of things. I don't know why these aren't. You can hide them too, but they should be not showing up. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Um, this is. Oh, there we go. On automatically update. There you go. It's updated. So now if I were to go back out to my workspace here, you can see. Whoops, let me go into this folder. This is my direct lakehouse. So I get that SQL Analytics endpoint. I have that default semantic model. So actually I come in here and I click on this default semantic model. You can see it'll show me just those tables that I selected because I didn't select those executive system views. And so I could from here, I could make a new Power BI report or something if I wanted to do that. Now I also have the option to, if I'm here, let me go to the Lakehouse endpoint. So I can actually decide, well, maybe I'm going to have a lake house that's going to have hundreds of tables and different things. And, there's a lot of different stuff inside that lake house. Maybe I'm saying, well, maybe I want a semantic model that's about some specific things inside this. So I can actually click new semantic model. I can give it a name. And then I can select what, tables I want to have as part of this. And so I might select a few things. I might say, oh, this is going to be a sales table specifically, and I'd select all the relevant stuff. I'd hit confirm, it'd create a new one. I've already made one out here. I'll show you. So this is that new semantic model that I have, which you can see is just pulling in just those tables that I selected, and I just selected everything from it. But once I've got that semantic model selected, what I can actually do is I can come over here and open this data model. And so what's cool about this is, I could have viewing, editing. I can actually edit this in Power BI Desktop if I want to open it up right in there, if I'm more familiar with that tool set, but it's the pretty identical features here. And so if I hover over this table, you can see that the storage mode is Direct Lake. And what happens is that this semantic models will default to Direct Lake where possible, because it recognizes that, oh, this is a table that's based off of a lake house's delta parquet, delta table, so that I can, the storage mode I can use here is Direct Lake. And so if I go into editing though, I can add new measures, new tables, calculation groups. I can add row level security if I wanted to add roles and assign those things. I can edit these relationships just like I can in Power BI Desktop. So when I first loaded this in, none of these relationships were here. So I went ahead and loaded it in. I went ahead and hid some columns. So I was like, the date key, you don't need to see that. So I hid basically all the keys, different things that were unimportant. And so from here, I can say, hey, maybe I want to make a new report. I want to save this to a version history. I can actually look at the version history of the different changes that I made here. So you can see this is the, so these are by default, the 5 versions of the semantic model that have been, recently worked on. They're all been done by me, obviously. But if I hit that, file, make new report, I can make a new report here. So this is the one that I ended up making. And so you can see here, this is, this is only 2013. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so you can see this is I've got a lot more filters on this. So this is, I'm looking at my sales across the world here and it's for all these different years. So I might say, okay, for 2011 in Australia, what were my sales? You can see most of them are coming obviously from different areas. I might say, give me just exactly South Australia, which is Adelaide. This is going off of postal codes, so it's not because obviously there might be the same postal code in two different areas. So for instance, if I do this, you can see Australia and Austria have the same postal code, at least in this demo data set. Anyways, but yeah, it filters and works just the same as those other things. And you can see here, if I go into edit, you can see that I have, so you can see this one is pulling the total sales measure that I created. And so I ended up making that here in the browser too. Now, one of the things to note, though, is that because we're doing this in direct lake mode, we're directly scanning those Delta Parquet files. So there's a handful of things we can't actually do. So if I go back to this model here, if I go into editing mode, because this is in direct lake mode, you can see this new column is grayed out. Well, that's because I can't actually do a calculated column because that would interfere with the Semantic Models' ability to read directly super fast speed from what's on the Delta tables. I can do measures, I can do calculation groups, tables, anything that's calculated after the fact I can do, but there are a handful of limitations. And so I'll pull this up here. This is the documentation. And you can see, different things that are and are not supported. So if I look up, calculated, so for instance, calculated tables is, where is it? Yeah, so we have direct lake on SQL endpoint, import, direct query. So you can see calculated columns. So yes, but I can't do calculations of tables that are in direct lake mode. And then obviously, yes, I can do calculated columns in import and direct query. So just important to know that when you're using direct lake mode, there are a huge number of benefits. There are some trade-offs, though, that you have to be aware of. So if I wanted to do a calculated column that, for instance, was that margin column that I did earlier, that was total, that was sales minus cost, I would have to go back to the Lakehouse tables and do it there, and then be able to pull that in, or go back to the source system even further. So yeah, I think that covers everything I wanted to cover. And if you can see here, this is actually that semantic model that I pushed up from Power BI Desktop. I don't have it sorted right now, but I can move it to a folder or something. So I can say, hey, move this to direct lake demo. Demo. So, yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about with the demo. Looking at my notes, yeah, I think I've hit everything that I wanted to talk about. The main takeaways, I would say, obviously with the Power BI semantic models, is that we have a lot of great options, obviously, for different storage modes. It's a very all-encompassing tool. It can connect to almost anything. You can set up relationships, measures, calculated columns, anything you need to do to create this kind of one source of truth of business logic for your reports, and different things like that. So, yeah, I think that's all. I'll hand it back over to Brian here. I think there's a couple slides to close this out.
Thanks for watching our session. Our calls to action for our partners: join our Fabric partner community on Teams. The Fabric engineering team hosts regular calls on technical topics as well as AMAs with our leadership team. And the Teams channel provides a great way for you to participate in ongoing discussion and ask any questions that you might have. And while we hope to see you in one of our hands-on workshops, we also have lots of learning opportunities in our Fabric learning paths, so dozens of hours of content are available to help get you up to speed and keep you updated on the latest enhancements. And finally, if you're interested in hosting your own in-a-day workshops, such as Fabric Analyst in a Day or Real-Time Intelligence in a Day, reach out to us and get started. I'll paste all of these links in the description below. Thanks for watching.